I got the call outside the ballroom doors. My mother's hospital bill crushed so tightly in my hand that the paper had gone soft with sweat. The nurse's voice came through the phone low and careful, like she already knew bad news becomes heavier when spoken too loudly. Miss Bennett, your mother's surgical team can only hold the operating room for another 45 minutes. If the deposit is not approved, we will have to move her down the list. For a second, I could not answer. Not because I had nothing to say, but because too many things were fighting inside my chest at once. Fear, shame, anger, helplessness. The old rage I carry for a father who had once promised me the world and then disappeared into a richer one. Across town, my mother lay under hospital lights with strangers preparing her body for a surgery she might not get. And here, behind golden doors dressed in flowers and expensive lies, Richard Bennett was laughing like life had never cost anyone anything. I looked down at the bill again even though I already knew every number. I had memorized it on the bus. In the hospital bathroom, beside my mother's bed. In the hallway near accounting, I had counted and recounted until arithmetic itself started to feel cruel. Every version of the truth ended the same way. I did not have enough money, not even close. I had promised myself years ago that I would never beg Richard Bennett for anything. Not rent, not groceries, not mercy, not recognition. He had walked out of our apartment 12 years earlier with polished shoes and a cleaner future. Married into wealth, rebuilt himself into a respectable man. And trained the world to forget that my mother and I had ever belonged to his name. But pride is a luxury poor daughters cannot always afford. Pride could not sign consent forms. Pride could not hold an oxygen mask in place. Pride could not keep my mother alive. Beside the ballroom entrance stood a gold sign framed by white roses and candles. Bennett Development welcomes Romano Holdings. I did not yet understand what Romano Holdings truly meant. I only knew my father had filled the Bellagio Grand with investors. Reporters, board members, men who measured each other in millions. Women who wore diamonds like confidence. And all of them were here to admire the man who had once left my mother to sell her wedding ring for rent. I almost turned back. My hand actually moved toward my coat pocket where the bus pass still sat folded from the ride over. But the nurse's words kept beating against my ribs like a second pulse. 45 minutes, 45 minutes, 45 minutes. So I pushed open the ballroom doors and stepped into a world built to make people like me disappear. The music was soft, the lighting warm. The crystal glasses glittered under chandeliers that probably cost more than our rent for a year. Conversations floated in polished fragments. Numbers, partnerships, land, strategy, growth. Women in silk glanced at me just long enough to notice my plain cream dress, my damp hair, my tired face, my old shoes, and then looked away with the refined indifference of people who believe discomfort should never enter a room uninvited. Near the stage stood my father. Richard Bennett, perfect in a tailored tuxedo. One hand wrapped around a champagne flute, the other resting lightly at the back of Vivian's waist. His wife beside them stood Celeste in silver, poised and glowing, the daughter he had kept. The daughter who had never known what hunger smelled like when the fridge was empty. What electricity felt like when it got cut in summer heat. What it meant to hear your mother cry through a bathroom door because she thought you were asleep. For one painful breath, my father looked directly at me, and something stupid inside me lifted. Some last childish part that still believed blood might recognize blood. It died the moment Vivian noticed me first. Her smile thinned, not with surprise, but with irritation, like she had found a stain on silk. She leaned toward Richard and whispered in his ear. I saw his expression change before I had even taken a second step, not into guilt, not into concern, but into embarrassment. I walked toward him anyway. Because my mother had less than 45 minutes and dignity could wait outside with the valet. The closer I got, the quieter the nearest conversations became. People always sense ruin before it speaks. They can smell desperation even through perfume and polished floors. Dad, I said, holding out the bill before my courage failed. My voice cracked on the word and I hated that it did. Please, it's Mom, the hospital called. They're going to move her from surgery if the deposit isn't approved. His eyes dropped to the paper. then moved to the guests watching us, then back to my face. I saw the decision happen before he spoke. He measured reputation against a life and found reputation more valuable. "I'm sorry," he said, cold and clear enough for the closest circle to hear. "I don't know this young woman." Something inside me broke so quietly no one heard it. But I felt every splinter. Celeste covered her mouth as if hiding a smile. Vivian lifted her chin and signaled security with one practiced glance. My father adjusted his cuff like denying me had been no more troublesome than swatting away a waiter. "Dad," I whispered again, softer this time. "Because humiliation makes fools of us. Please." His jaw hardened. "You are mistaken." Security guard touched my arm. That touch snapped the moment open. I pulled away not because I felt strong, but because I could not bear to be dragged out while strangers watched and my father pretended decency beside flower arrangements. My phone buzzed again. The hospital. The operating room was slipping away minute by minute, and the man who could save my mother had just erased me in public. So I ran past mirrors, through perfume and music and laughter, past waiters carrying silver trays, past women who stepped aside so my panic would not brush their dresses. I heard a laugh behind me. Maybe Celeste's, maybe someone else's. I did not turn around to see who found pain entertaining. I burst into a quieter hallway lined in cream marble and low gold light. My breath was too fast, my vision sharp at the edges. At the far end, a private elevator was closing. A guard inside had just entered a code. Men in dark suits were stepping in with the easy assurance of those who move through restricted doors all their lives. I did not think. I threw my hand between the doors. The safety sensor caught. The doors slid back open. And I stumbled inside straight into the kind of silence that feels armed. 4 men in black turned toward me at once. Their hands moved toward their jackets so fast my knees almost gave out. One stepped forward, ready to pin me against the wall. But the man in the center lifted one hand and the whole elevator obeyed. Stopped, not slowed, stopped. Even my breath seemed too loud in the space he occupied. He wore black like the color had been invented for him. His posture was loose in the way only very dangerous men can afford. Dark eyes, trimmed beard, gold chain just visible at his throat. No restless movement, no need to prove anything. Stillness clung to him like power. I did not know his name yet. Only that I had entered the wrong elevator, and maybe the wrong kind of story. "I'm sorry," I gasped, backing toward the wall. "I didn't know. I'll get out at the next floor. I just need to get to my mother." His gaze dropped to the hospital bill crumpled in my fist. Then returned to my face, something in his expression sharpened. Not softness, never that, something more exact. As if he had recognized a language he had not heard in years. "Who made you run?" he asked. His voice was quiet, but it carried like a held blade. My throat burned. I wanted to say my father, I wanted to say poverty. I wanted to say every smiling person who had watched me become nothing. Instead I whispered, "Please, I just need to get to the hospital." The elevator kept descending. The private code had already been entered and no one made a move to stop it. The men around him waited the way men wait around command. Not suggestion, one of the guards said, "Boss." Private access was breached. The man did not look away from me. "I can see that, Luca." "Boss," the word landed with weight. I had not run into a businessman's elevator. I had run into danger with polished shoes and disciplined silence. "I didn't mean to," I said quickly. "Please." "I'll leave on the next floor." I reached toward the buttons. One of the guards shifted just enough to remind me I would move only with permission. The man in black pressed a button himself. The elevator did not stop. It kept descending. "Which hospital?" he asked. I blinked. "What?" "Your mother." "Which hospital?" "St. Agnes," I answered before fear could stop me. "But I'm not asking you for anything. I just need to get there." "How much?" Heat rushed into my face. "No." One dark brow lifted slightly. "No. I didn't come here to be bought by another powerful man." The guard nearest the door looked at me the way someone looks at a person who has stepped too close to an edge. My pulse hammered. but I forced myself not to shrink. The man studied me for a long moment. You think I want to buy you. I don't know what you want. For the first time, the corner of his mouth moved. Not a smile exactly, something like recognition. Smart answer. Fear must have shown on my face because his tone shifted just enough to lose its sharpest edge. I asked how much because your hand is shaking and your mother has less than 45 minutes. 39 now, I whispered. Then we don't have time to argue. The elevator opened into an underground garage, bright with white lights and lined with black cars. Men in suits stood beside them as if the floor itself answered to whoever had stepped out first. At the far end, a hotel manager froze when he saw the man emerge, then lowered his eyes immediately. The man walked toward the nearest car. The others moved with him like shadows trained to follow a storm. He stopped beside the open door and looked back at me. I can take you to the hospital. Or you can keep your pride and lose time. The words hit because they were true. Why? I asked, my voice rough now from too much swallowed humiliation. Why would you help me? He glanced once at the bill still in my hand, then back at me. Because you didn't run into my elevator to save yourself. Something in my chest tightened. You ran for your mother, he said. I looked down because if I kept looking at him, I was afraid I might cry in front of a man whose shoes probably cost more than my monthly paycheck. I'll pay you back, I said. I'm not paying yet. I looked up. Yet. I'm taking you there first. He opened the car door and stepped aside. Not touching me, not grabbing my arm, not steering my body like it belonged to the urgency of his decision. He simply waited, and somehow that unsettled me more than force would have. Men like him were supposed to take. That is what the world had taught me. Rich men took wives, time, reputations, choices. Hospitals took deposits before mercy. Powerful people took what they wanted and called it order. But he opened a door and acted as if my decision still mattered. I got in. He sat beside me. Luca took the front seat. Another black car pulled out behind us. The garage gate opened and the city rushed into motion. As the hotel disappeared behind glass and rain streaks, tears slid down my face before I could stop them. I wiped them away fast, but his voice came from beside me. You don't have to hide that. A broken laugh slipped out of me. People say that until tears make them uncomfortable, I am difficult to make uncomfortable. Because you're used to people crying. Because I'm used to people lying. I turned to look at him. City lights moved across his face in cold flashes. He looked carved from shadow and restraint. What's your name? He asked. I hesitated, then answered. Mira. Mira what? The name felt heavy. But I said it anyway. Bennett. The air in the car shifted. I saw Luca glance at the mirror. The man beside me went very still, Bennett, he repeated. Slowly. I looked out the window. It's just a name. In rooms like that, names are rarely just names. I did not answer. I was too tired to explain that Richard Bennett had only ever used that name like a locked door. Never like shelter. The sign outside the ballroom flashed through my memory. Romano Holdings. That was you. Yes. My stomach dropped. Even I knew the name Romano. Everyone in the city did. Always in lowered voices. Always in fragments. Private investor, acquisition king, untouchable, dangerous. The kind of man newspapers described in soft language because hard truth can get people hurt. Then you should go back, I said. He'll be waiting for you. Let him wait. You don't even know me. I know enough. No. You don't, I said, exhaustion making me sharper than caution would have liked. You know I ran into your elevator. You know my mother is sick. You know I don't have the money. That doesn't mean you know me. And there it was again. That almost smile, brief and strange and nearly relieved. There she is, he said. I frowned. What does that mean? The woman hidden under the panic. My father had seen my desperation and called security. This man saw my anger and looked almost reassured by it. "Who are you?" I asked, though part of me already feared the answer. The guard in front shifted, as if the question itself had weight. But the man answered without hesitation, "Alessio Romano." Cold slid down my spine. I had heard that name more than once, never in safe stories. Alessio Romano. The man who built empires out of other men's mistakes. Alessio Romano, whose enemies lost contracts, properties, confidence, nerve, sometimes more. A man the city respected the way people respect storms. By not standing too close. "Oh God," I whispered. He looked at me calmly. "No, just Alessio." Under any other circumstances I might have laughed. Instead, it only reminded me how thoroughly I had fallen out of ordinary life. "Please don't," I said before pride could stop me. His face changed. Not into anger exactly. Something older. Something buried so deep it almost looked like pain. "Who taught you to ask that so quickly?" he asked. I twisted my fingers together. "Life." He looked out the window for a moment. Jaw hard. Then said quietly, "I am not going to hurt you." Mira. St. Agnes rose ahead, white and glaring against the night. The car had barely stopped when I reached for the handle. But Alessio moved first. He did not touch me. He only blocked the door for a second. "Wait, my mother. You'll reach her faster if people move out of your way." He stepped out first. And the hospital changed the moment he entered. Security straightened. Nurses looked up. A man at reception dropped his pen. The night supervisor emerged from behind the desk, saw Alessio Romano, and forgot whatever sentence he had been about to say. No one spoke his name, but everyone knew it. I followed behind him, suddenly aware of my cheap dress, my wet hair, the tear marks on my face. Alessio did not look embarrassed to have me beside him. That alone almost undid me. The nurse who had called recognized me and rushed forward. "Miss Bennett, I'm so sorry. The surgeon is waiting. But accounting still needs approval before they can keep the specialist assigned." Alessio turned slightly. "Take her to her mother." The nurse blinked, then glanced uncertainly at the desk. "Sir, hospital policy requires." Alessio looked at Luca. That was enough. Luca stepped to the counter with a black card and his phone already in hand. "Romano Holdings is listed under your private donor emergency account. Call your administrator now and authorize the deposit." The operating room stays reserved. The receptionist went pale and started dialing. "No," I said immediately. Alessio turned toward me. "Mira," I said, "no. Your mother needs surgery, and I don't want her life turned into a debt I owe with my soul." The lobby fell silent. Even the people who pretended not to stare were staring now. Alessio did not interrupt me. He stepped closer. Slowly enough that I could have moved away if I wanted. "Listen carefully," he said. "I am not buying your silence, your gratitude, or your future. I am buying your mother time. You can hate me after she survives, but let her survive first." My mouth trembled. I hated that his words reached the most exhausted part of me, the part already leaning toward collapse. The nurse touched my shoulder gently. "Ms. Bennett, please. We need to move now." I looked from the black card to Alessio's face. There was no smugness there, no performance, no reminder of his own power, only the maddening steadiness of a man who had decided and did not need applause for it. "I'll pay you back," I said, "if that helps you stand." "Say it. I mean it. Then I believe you." No one had said that to me in a very long time. The nurse led me down the corridor before I could answer. My mother looked smaller than she had that morning. Machines surrounded her. A thin blanket covered her legs. Her skin had that hospital paleness that made her seem already half surrendered to exhaustion. But her eyes opened when I entered. "Mira," she whispered. I dropped beside the bed and took her hand. "I'm here." Her fingers were cold. "You went to him. I couldn't lie." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He denied us," I said. And my voice cracked open. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Like I was nothing. My mother closed her eyes and one tear slipped down her temple. Richard has spent years pretending his choices had no faces. I hate him, I whispered. She squeezed my hand weakly. No, you don't. I want to. That is different. I pressed my forehead against her hand. I couldn't get the money. Her eyes searched my face with that impossible mother vision that sees through every omission. Then why are they preparing me? I swallowed. A man from the hotel helped. What man? Alessio Romano. Fear entered her eyes so quickly it frightened me. Mira, I know. No, baby. You do not know men like that. I didn't ask him, he saw the bill. He paid before I could stop him. She tried to shift upright. Pain caught her. Powerful men do not give without wanting something. He said he bought you time. Not me. She stared at me. Did you believe him? I thought of the elevator. His hand stopping the guards, the way he had asked who made me run. The way he had opened the car door and waited for my choice. I wanted to, I whispered. Her face softened with sadness. Be careful with wanting, Mira, when you are tired. Wanting can sound like safety. Before I could answer, the surgeon entered and the room changed shape around urgency. Forms, signatures, nurses unlocking wheels. Masks, quick voices, my mother's bed began to move toward the operating room, and panic rose through me all over again. Mom, she turned her head toward me. Stand straight. Mira. I'm scared. I know. What if, no? She said. Weak but firm. Don't let fear have the last word. I walked beside her bed until the double doors stopped me. A nurse held out a hand and told me I had to wait there. My mother looked at me one last time and said, His shame is not yours. Then the doors opened and took her away. I stood staring at the place she had disappeared until the hallway itself blurred. For the first time that night, I had nowhere to run. No counter, no ball. Coming from a man the city feared, it was too simple, too human, too gentle for the reputation that followed him. I sat because my legs had started shaking. Alessio sat 2 chairs away, leaving space the way he always seemed to. Like he understood distance could be a form of respect. Hospital time is not real time. It stretches and sags and punishes. Luca brought coffee. I held the cup without drinking it. Nurses whispered from corners. Doctors pretended not to stare. Alessio ignored all of it with the ease of a man who had learned to be watched without caring. Nearly 2 hours passed before Luca's phone vibrated. He read the message and bent toward Alessio, speaking quietly. Alessio's eyes lifted toward the elevator and then returned to me. Richard Bennett is here, he said. My stomach tightened. From my mother, Alessio's silence answered before his words did. He came after calling 3 board members to ask whether I had returned to the hotel. Of course he had. My mother was in surgery and my father had come not because her life mattered. Her life mattered, but because Alessio Romano had left his event. Alessio watched my face. Do you want him stopped? Part of me did. Part of me wanted no more of Richard Bennett's voice near any room where my mother breathed. But another part was tired of hiding from a man who had already spent years reducing me. No, I said. Let him come. Alessio rose. I'll be at the nurse station. Why? Because some men only tell the truth when they think no one important can hear them. He stepped away. Far enough that my father would think I was alone, close enough that I was not. A few minutes later, Richard Bennett emerged from the elevator with Vivian and Celeste behind him. He looked first down the hallway for Alessio. When he saw him speaking with Luca and a hospital administrator, some of the panic left his face and something colder replaced it. He thought I was alone enough to pressure. Confident enough to lie. He walked toward me quickly. Voice low, controlled, furious beneath the polish. Do you understand what you have done? I looked up at him. My mother is in surgery. My meeting was tonight, he hissed. Romano left because of you. He was supposed to be discussing private investment. Not running to a hospital with a girl who had no right to be there. A girl. Even here. Even now, outside the room where my mother was being cut open to survive. He would not say daughter. He pulled a check from inside his jacket and held it out. Take this. I stared at it. What is this? Money, which is what you came for. Isn't it? Pay the hospital. Pay whatever else you need. Then leave this alone. You will not go near Romano again. You will not tell him who you are. And you will not tell him I am your father. Tonight was a misunderstanding. That is all he needs to know. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. So you came because you're afraid he might find out I'm your daughter. His eyes darted toward the nurse station. Keep your voice down. Why? Because truth sounds ugly when rich people hear it. Vivian stepped forward with her perfect sympathy already arranged. Mira, don't be foolish. Your father is offering help. I looked at the check again. No, he's offering silence. Celeste crossed her arms. You should be grateful. I looked at her, polished and untouched by deprivation. I begged tonight. I begged my father to help save my mother. He said he didn't know me. Richard's face hardened. But he kept his voice low. That made it worse. Cruelty chosen is worse than cruelty lost to temper. You embarrassed me in front of important people, he said. You erased me in front of them. You forced my hand. The words hit like a slap. I stood up slowly. I forced your hand. He pushed the check closer. Take it, Mira. It is more than your mother ever got from me. For 1 second the hallway blurred again. My mother lay behind those doors with tubes in her arms, and he was still speaking of her like an old inconvenience. My fingers closed around the check. Relief flashed across his face, then I tore it in half. Vivian inhaled sharply. Celeste stared. I dropped the pieces into the trash beside the chairs. You came to this hospital because Alessio left your party, I said. Not because my mother might die. Richard's expression turned hard as stone. Without my name, you are nothing. The sentence hung between us. Maybe once that would have destroyed me, maybe in the ballroom it had. But now my mother's words stood between his shame and my heart. His shame is not yours. Slow footsteps sounded behind him. Steady, measured, impossible to ignore. Alessio Romano walked back from the nurse station and stopped beside me. Not in front of me, beside me. The corridor seemed to understand the difference before anyone else did. Richard lost color. Mr. Romano. This is a private matter. Alessio's gaze flicked to the torn check in the trash, then back to Richard. You made it public when you denied her in my ballroom. There has been a misunderstanding, Richard said quickly. No, Alessio replied, calm and precise. For once. I think I understand perfectly. Vivian tried to smile. Family matters can be complicated. Alessio's eyes moved to her, and the smile disappeared before it fully formed. Complicated is when people disagree. This is something uglier. Richard straightened as if he could still pull business out of his collapsing character. This girl is emotional. Her mother's illness has made her desperate. Alessio turned his head toward me. Not to question me, but to acknowledge who truth belonged to. Then looked back at my father. She ran into my elevator with a hospital bill in her hand and fear on her face. You stood in a ballroom and pretended not to know her. Now you are here with a check asking her to hide the truth so your deal survives. My father opened his mouth. But nothing useful came. Alessio stepped closer. You told her without your name she is nothing. He paused. Good. Then everyone should know she never needed your name to be worth something. Before Richard could answer, the surgery doors opened and a doctor stepped out pulling down his mask. Everything in me stopped. The doctor looked past Richard, Vivian and Celeste and found me, Miss Bennett. I could barely breathe. Alessio's hand lowered beside mine, close enough to reach, never touching. As if even then he understood that comfort only matters when chosen. Your mother made it through surgery, the doctor said. My knees almost gave way. I covered my mouth with both hands because if I didn't, I thought my whole body might split open with relief. She is stable for now, he continued. The next 24 hours are important. We are moving her to recovery and then I see you. You can see her soon. Behind me, Richard cleared his throat. Doctor, I'm Richard Bennett. I'll be handling any further financial arrangements for Mrs. No, I said. Before he could finish, my voice was weak from relief and exhaustion. But it still cut through him. You don't get to arrive after surgery and speak like you saved her, Vivian murmured. This is not the time. You're right. I said. The time was 12 years ago. The doctor gently asked me to wait in the family room. I followed a nurse because my body no longer understood how to stand still after terror. The family room was too small for the night it had witnessed: pale walls, burnt coffee smell. Chairs designed by people who had never waited for someone they loved to wake up. Alessio stood near the door, distant enough not to crowd the grief in the room. "I'll have Luca arrange anything she needs for recovery," he said. My head lifted at once. No, he did not argue. He simply waited. "I don't know how to accept help from you without feeling like I'm losing something," I said. His eyes held mine. "Then don't accept anything else tonight." "What does that mean?" "It means your mother's surgery is paid. That cannot be undone. Everything after this is your decision. And if I say no, then I listen." I almost laughed. "Tired and bitter. Men like you don't listen. Men like me," he said, "are usually surrounded by people too afraid to say anything worth hearing." Before I could reply, the door opened. Richard stepped inside alone, leaving Vivian and Celeste outside as if he thought a gentler face would work better without witnesses. "Could I speak to my daughter alone?" he asked. The words should have warmed me. They did not. They felt cold on contact, like something counterfeit. "Now I'm your daughter," I asked. "Mira, I made a mistake upstairs." "You made a choice." I was under pressure. So was my mother. He looked away for half a second, and in that half second I saw the man he might once have been if cowardice had not become habit. Then pride returned and buried him again. "I can fix this," he said. "I will cover the hospital bills, arrange a private nurse. Make sure your mother gets a proper room. And in return," his jaw tightened, "you will stop speaking about tonight. You will tell Mr. Romano that you misunderstood what happened. You came to me emotionally. I intended to help privately. But you panicked." I stared at him. My mother was unconscious, and he was already rebuilding the lie around her body. Alessio's voice came from the doorway. "She understands perfectly." Richard turned, slipping from father to businessman in a breath. "Mr. Romano, I have spent years building Bennett Development. Tonight's meeting was important not only to me, but to hundreds of employees. Surely one emotional incident should not threaten everything." Alessio's face remained still. "If one truth can threaten everything, perhaps everything was weaker than you believed." Richard's hands curled at his sides. "You would walk away from a major deal over a girl you met tonight." The room stilled. Alessio stepped closer, not loudly, not theatrically. Just enough to make my father's confidence retreat. "I would walk away from 100 deals for one clear look at a man's character." "This is sentimental nonsense," Richard snapped. "No," Alessio said. "This is risk assessment." My father had no answer to that. He left the room carrying the first visible crack in the image he loved most. Later, a nurse took me to my mother. She lay pale and asleep in recovery. Machines blinking in quiet rhythm around her. I touched her fingers carefully and whispered, "Mom." She did not wake, but her fingers moved just enough to press mine. That tiny response destroyed whatever composure I had managed to hold together. When I came out, Alessio was still there. He had taken calls, sent men away. Given low instructions that moved systems I did not understand. But he had not left. She squeezed my hand. I said, "Because it suddenly felt like the only sentence in the world that mattered." "Then she is still giving orders," he replied. I laughed once, broken and surprised. And for a second that laugh seemed to surprise him too, not because he had made a joke, but because laughter had no business surviving in that hallway, and yet there it was. Dawn came gray and slow through the hospital windows. By then my father was gone, but the damage of him remained like smoke. Around 6, Luca brought coffee and a paper bag of food. I took the coffee because my body had become hollow. "You should sleep," Alessio said. "I can't." "Then eat. You always give orders. Only when people are bad at taking care of themselves." I looked at him over the rim of the cup. "Is that why no one likes you?" Luca made a sound that might have been a cough. Alessio looked at me for a long moment, and then the corner of his mouth moved. No one has asked me that so directly before. Maybe no one has had a night as bad as mine. Fair? He said. His almost smile disappeared, but not coldly. People don't like me, he added. Because liking me is dangerous. Do you like anyone? I asked before caution could stop me. Maybe sleeplessness makes honesty reckless. He turned his gaze toward the window. Morning light caught the fatigue under his eyes, and for the first time, he looked less invincible and more human than rumor allowed. No, he said simply. I learned early that attachment gives people a place to cut. That sounds lonely, I said. It is efficient. That wasn't what I said. He looked back at me, and something quiet passed between us. Fragile enough to deny and real enough to feel. No, he said. It wasn't. Later that morning, when my mother was moved to ICU, an administrator came to discuss recovery costs. Medication, monitoring, rehabilitation, private nursing. Numbers so large they sounded fictional, bigger than rent, bigger than savings. Bigger than the life my mother and I had built stitch by stitch after Richard left. Alessio remained silent until the man walked away. Then said, There is a recovery center outside the city. Her doctor recommends it when she stabilizes. You said I decide. I answered immediately. Yes, then don't decide for me. I asked for medical options. Not the decision. I watched him. It still sounded dangerously close to control. I'm working on the difference, he said. I should not have smiled, but I did. Then it vanished again under the weight of reality. I can't afford a recovery center. I can. That is exactly the problem. He sat across from me, hands loosely clasped. And for the first time he looked less like a man who owned rooms and more like someone trying not to break one by entering it. Mira, if money is the only wall between your mother and care, let me remove the wall. And what do I become after you remove it? The same woman who told me no in an elevator, he answered. My throat tightened. Why do you keep helping? I asked. He looked at me for a long time before speaking. Because when you ran into that elevator, you were not asking to be saved. You were trying to save someone else. The room seemed to narrow around those words. I have seen people run toward me for money. Fear, protection, revenge, and power, he continued. You were the first woman who ran into my life without wanting anything from me. Warmth rose under my skin. Not romance yet, not the soft glittering kind stories like to name too quickly. It felt more frightening than that. It felt like being seen after years of standing in corners pretending invisibility was chosen. Don't pity me, I whispered. I don't, he said at once. Everyone does when they hear my story. Your story does not make me pity you, he said. It makes me question everyone who failed you. By afternoon my phone began filling with messages. Unknown numbers, old classmates, coworkers I barely spoke to. Someone had posted a clip from the ballroom. Not the whole scene. Only enough to show me standing near my father with a paper in my hand while security approached. Captions painted me desperate, unstable, dramatic. Another said I had disrupted a private event and somehow left with Alessio Romano. My skin went cold. One message read, Girls like you always know which powerful man to cry in front of. The rumor moved quickly because the world loves certain lies. Especially about women, especially poor women. Especially women who appear near powerful men. By evening the story had become uglier. I was no longer a daughter begging for surgery money. I was a gold digger, an opportunist, a scene maker. A girl who knew how to perform tears for rich men. Alessio found me staring at the phone. One look at my face was enough. Who sent it? He asked. Everyone. He held out his hand. May I? I gave him the phone because I was too tired not to. He read in silence, and something dangerous returned to his stillness. Not temper, not outward rage, something colder and more exact. Like a man deciding the proper dimensions of consequence. Luca, he said. Luca appeared almost instantly. Find where it started. No noise, no blood. But make sure whoever did it understands that lies have invoices. No, I said quickly. Alessio looked at me. No, don't destroy anyone. That is not what I said. It was what your face said. Luca wisely looked elsewhere. Alessio returned the phone to me. They are lying about you. People lie about women like me all the time, I said. Bitterness cutting through exhaustion. If we cry, we're dramatic. If we ask for help, we're greedy. If a man helps us, we must have sold something. My voice shook. I don't want to become another reason people call you dangerous. I am already called dangerous. Not because of me. He studied me with something like frustrated disbelief. You're still protecting people who would not protect you. No, I said softly. I am protecting myself from becoming like them. That stopped him. The anger in his face did not disappear. But it changed shape. He sat beside me, closer than before. Still without touching. Then tell me what you want, he said. No one had asked me that all day. I looked toward the room where my mother slept under machines and sterile light. I want my mother to wake up. I want my father to stop rewriting what happened. I want whoever started that rumor exposed with the truth, not punished in darkness. And I want to stand in a room one day and not feel ashamed because someone else abandoned me. Alessio nodded slowly. Then we start there. I repeated. If you allow it. I looked at him, a tired smile almost pulling at my mouth. You really don't know how to be normal. Do you? No, he said. This time I smiled first. The next morning my mother woke, not fully, not easily, but enough to know my face and squeeze my hand. When her eyes shifted toward the doorway and found Alessio standing there, some light returned to them, and some caution with it. Mr. Romano, she whispered. He stepped forward with a respect that surprised me. Mrs. Bennett, my daughter tells me you bought me time, she said. She chose to let me, he answered. My mother looked at me, then back to him. Mira does not know how to owe without bleeding herself dry. I have noticed, he said. Then don't make kindness a chain. I won't. Men always say that, she murmured. Pausing to breathe, prove it later. I will. She studied him more carefully. Why her? My face warmed. Mom, she ignored me. You are a man with enemies, money, and women who probably know how to smile in 5 languages. Why did you follow my daughter to a hospital? Alessio was silent long enough that I thought he might refuse. Then he answered in a voice so steady, it almost hid the grief inside it. Because she was afraid and still proud. Because she needed help and still protected her dignity. Because when she said mother, I remembered mine. My mother's expression changed. Gone, yes, hospital. Too late, he said. I had power by then, not enough. Never where it mattered. My mother closed her eyes for a moment. Then opened them again, softer now. Be careful. Grief can mistake someone for a second chance. He did not deny it. I know. Do you? I am trying to. She looked at me next, her voice weak but pointed. Gratitude is not love, Mira. Rescue is not love. Do not hand over your heart just because someone arrived when others left. I nodded. Embarrassed and grateful all at once. Then Alessio said quietly. She shouldn't. We both looked at him. She shouldn't give me her heart because I paid a bill, he said. If she ever gives me anything, it should be because I earned peace in her life. Not because I ended panic for one night. My mother watched him for a long time and then, very faintly, she smiled. Good answer. After that, something changed, not suddenly. Not in the dramatic way stories like to pretend love arrives, but slowly, through small things that do not glitter enough to be dramatic and yet change everything. Through hospital chairs and bad coffee, through the way Alessio never entered my mother's room without asking first. Through the way he remembered which side of the bed she preferred me to sit on. Through the way he never referred to Richard as my father unless I did first, with his name attached for attention. Instead, he sent a softer blanket because my mother complained the hospital one scratched her skin. A second opinion from a surgeon in another city, but only after asking whether I wanted it. Solutions without spectacle, influence without humiliation. On the 3rd day, Richard sent his lawyer. The man was thin, silver glasses, expensive tie. A voice polished by other people's suffering. Alessio did not enter the room. He only stood outside the glass where the lawyer could see him, visible enough to make arrogance careful. The lawyer explained that my father wished to avoid further confusion. Reporters were asking questions. The board of Bennett Development was concerned. Richard was prepared to establish a medical trust for my mother if I signed a statement, describing the ballroom incident as a misunderstanding caused by stress and emotional instability. I looked at the signature line for a long time. My name sat there like a trap disguised as rescue. "This is a generous offer, Miss Bennett," the lawyer said. "Generous," I repeated. "Is that what rich men call a gag?" His smile tightened. "You should think carefully. I have, without this. Your mother's ongoing care may become difficult." Fear moved through me. But it did not own me the way it once had. I pushed the papers back across the table. "My mother taught me that dignity only leaves when you hand it away," I said. "Tell Richard I'm not handing it over." The lawyer looked toward the hallway, saw Alessio watching without expression, and collected his papers with fingers no longer quite steady. 10 minutes later, Luca returned with a tablet. "The smear began from Celeste Bennett's assistant," he said. The original ballroom clip was sent to a gossip account from a phone registered under her public relations company. We recovered a message from Celeste telling the account to make the poor girl look unstable. Her exact words. My face went cold. But I was not surprised. Alessio looked at me. "I told you I would not destroy anyone in darkness. But I will not let them destroy you in public with lies." "What are you going to do?" I asked. "Nothing you do not approve," he answered. "And if I approve nothing, then the proof stays locked." Luca looked surprised. I understood why a man like Alessio Romano was not accustomed to asking permission before acting. But that was the thing about him I had begun to fear more than his reputation. His patience, when he chose restraint, he became harder to refuse, not easier. The next morning, an online article described me as an unstable young woman who had interrupted a private business event and manipulated a prominent investor. No one used the word daughter, no one used the word surgery, no one used the word mother. Truth had been stripped, dressed in expensive language and sent out smiling. I expected Alessio to explode. Instead, he became colder. Quieter, more precise. "Tonight," he said, "Bennett is hosting the rescheduled investment dinner." I stared at him. After all this, especially after all this, he needs to reassure the board that he still has me. "Do you still plan to go?" "Yes." Something painful moved through me before I could hide it. "For the deal. For the truth," he said. Then after a beat, "Come with me." I laughed once because it sounded impossible. "No, Mira, no. I'm not walking into another room full of those people so they can stare at me again. This time you won't be running. That does not make it easier." "No," he agreed. "But it makes it yours." I turned away because the fear rose too quickly. "You do not understand what rooms like that do to people like me," I said. "Then tell me." The gentleness in his voice nearly broke me open. "They make you feel like your shoes are wrong. Your voice is too loud, your pain is too visible. Your whole life is something that should have remained outside, and when everyone looks at you long enough, you start believing them." Alessio was silent for a moment, then said, "My whole life, rooms like that taught me something different. They taught me that if people fear you enough, they will make space. But fear is not respect." I know that now. I looked back at him. "And what do you want from me?" "Walk in with your head up," he said. "Not for me, not for them. For the girl who ran out of that ballroom believing she had been made small." My throat tightened. "And if I can't, then we leave, just like that. Just like that." From the bed, my mother, who I had thought was asleep, opened one eye. "Go," she said. I turned. "Mom." "No, I did not survive surgery so you could hide in hospital corridors while that man turns your pain into a rumor," she whispered. "You need to stop carrying shame that was never yours." "What if I break?" I asked. She touched my cheek. "Then break standing. That evening I wore the same cream dress. Cleaned now, though one small mark near the hem would not disappear.
I thought briefly of asking for something expensive, something elegant enough to help me belong.
Then I decided I wanted them to see the same girl they had dismissed.
Not improved, not disguised, simply unashamed.
Alessio arrived in a black suit, sharp enough to divide the night. When he saw the dress, he understood without asking. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No." "Good." I looked at him. "Why is that good?" "Because ready is overrated." "That is terrible advice. I am not known for comfort." "No," I said.
Softer than I meant to. But you are learning. We drove to the Bellagio Grand mostly in silence. When the hotel came into view, my hands turned cold.
Alessio noticed at once. "We can turn around," he said. I shook my head. "If I turn around now, I'll hear Celeste laughing for the rest of my life." The car stopped at the main entrance.
Not the private garage. Cameras flashed before the door was even fully open.
Reporters called Alessio's name. He ignored them, stepped out.
Then turned back and held out his hand. I looked at it. The whole world seemed to pause around that gesture.
Perhaps he read the fight on my face because he lowered his hand immediately. No offense, no pressure. "Your choice," he said. That was why I took it.
Not because I needed help stepping from a car, but because he had let me decide whether I wanted it.
Inside, the ballroom looked exactly the same.
Same gold light, same flowers, same polished floor. Same people performing importance beneath chandeliers. But I was not the same girl who had entered last time. Richard stood near the stage with Vivian and Celeste. The moment he saw me beside Alessio,
his face froze. He had expected Alessio, not me.
He hurried forward with a smile so false it looked painful.
"Mr. Romano, I'm glad you came. And Mira,
I'm glad you're feeling calmer tonight." My stomach turned at the lie dressed as concern.
"Calmer," I repeated.
"Of course," Richard said,
voice carrying just enough. "Last night was difficult.
A family misunderstanding during a medical emergency, but we are handling it privately." There it was.
The lie polished for public consumption. "Family misunderstanding," I repeated. "In this ballroom you said you didn't know me." His eyes flashed warning. "Mira, at the hospital you told me not to tell Mr. Romano you were my father." The room quieted exactly the way rooms do when truth enters without invitation. Richard's smile vanished. "This is not appropriate." "No," I said.
My voice shook, but it reached farther than before.
"What was not appropriate was letting my mother lie in a hospital bed while you protected your reputation."
What was not appropriate was handing me a check so I would hide who I was.
"What was not appropriate was calling me your daughter only after the man you needed chose to stand beside me." Cameras flashed from the edges of the room. Vivian stepped forward. "This is cruel, Mira. Your father has been under enormous pressure." I looked at her. "So was my mother's heart." Celeste laughed. "Brittle now. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Playing victim in front of everyone." I turned to her, and for the first time in my life her beauty did not make me feel smaller. "No," I said.
"I am tired of being turned into the villain because I survived what your family did quietly."
A woman standing near the champagne table whispered too loudly. "You did this to your own sister." Celeste's face flickered. Richard lowered his voice. "Enough." Then Alessio finally spoke.
"No. Not enough." The entire room remembered who he was. Conversations died completely. Even the staff went still. He stepped forward. But he did not look at the contract folders on the nearby table.
He looked directly at Richard Bennett. "Last night," he said,
"I came to this hotel to discuss investment in Bennett Development. I left before the meeting because a woman ran into my elevator with a hospital bill in her hand and more dignity than anyone in this room showed her."
My breath caught. Richard went pale. "I followed her to St. Agnes because her mother was being removed from a surgery schedule while you stood here smiling beneath your own name." Alessio continued. "I watched you come to the hospital not to ask whether the woman you abandoned survived,
but to offer your daughter money in exchange for silence." Whispers moved through the room in restless waves.
"Mr. Romano, you are making a serious accusation."
Richard said.
No, Alessio replied. I am giving everyone the courtesy of hearing it from me before they see the proof. Luca stepped forward and placed a tablet on the nearest table.
The screen lit up with footage from the hospital corridor. There was Richard holding out the check, me tearing it, and then his voice.
Clear enough for every person there to hear. You will not tell him I am your father. Without my name you are nothing.
Silence fell differently after evidence, not shocked now, but convinced.
Richard stared at the screen as if it had betrayed him. Vivian's hand slid from his arm.
Reporters near the door lifted phones and began speaking at once. Alessio turned his gaze towards Celeste.
The smear online also began with your assistant's phone. Celeste went white. That's a lie. Luca tapped the screen again, and the message appeared for all to see. Make the poor girl look unstable before Romano asks questions. A low sound moved through the ballroom. Disgust has a different pitch than gossip. Celeste looked at her father, then at the crowd.
Suddenly there was no silver dress shiny enough to protect her. Questions began firing from the back. Mr. Bennett.
Is Mira your daughter? Did you deny her publicly? Did your company know about the smear? Did you attempt to silence her? Richard opened his mouth.
But the man who had always known how to perform had lost his script.
Alessio turned toward the contract table. Romano Holdings will not invest in Bennett Development, he said. Not tonight, not ever. The words landed harder than any shout. Richard lost all color. A board member leaned toward another and whispered something that looked like emergency meeting.
Even from where I stood, I could see the future of his empire beginning to crack under the weight of public truth.
You can't do this, Richard said. Alessio looked at him with no visible effort at all.
I just did. Then my father did the one thing I'd wanted my whole life and no longer needed. He turned to me, not with love,
but desperation. Mira, you are my daughter. You know I never meant to hurt you. There it was. Daughter, the word I had spent years imagining. Dreaming, grieving, waiting for. It healed nothing. I stepped closer. No, I said. I was your daughter when my mother sold her wedding ring to pay rent. I was your daughter when I sent birthday cards you never answered.
I was your daughter last night when I stood in this ballroom with a hospital bill in my hand. I was your daughter last night when I stood in my hand. When I stood in this ballroom with a hospital bill in my hand.
I was your daughter when you said you did not know me. His eyes shone. I no longer cared whether it was guilt or fear. Both had arrived too late. Mira, please, he whispered. You do not get to claim me because losing me became expensive, I said. The silence that followed was complete. For years I had imagined this moment differently. In every version I screamed, or cried, or demanded apologies. But standing there I felt something quieter and far stronger than rage. I felt finished, not destroyed, finished. Like a wound finally deciding to close. Then Alessio spoke again, turning toward the room. St. Agnes Hospital will receive a donation tonight for a patient assistance fund in Elena Bennett's name.
My mother's name in that ballroom made my chest ache.
No family should have to beg for an operating room while men like this buy applause with charity, he said.
Richard flinched as if struck. Reporters shouted. Cameras flashed.
Investors moved away from my father in careful waves. But all I heard in that moment was my mother's voice. Break standing I had. Alessio turned toward the exit. Then stopped and looked back at me. He did not call me. He did not hold out his hand. He only waited. The choice was mine again. I looked once at Richard. He seemed smaller now. Not because he had lost money, but because I no longer needed him to be larger than the damage he had done. Then I turned and walked out of that ballroom beside Alessio Romano. Not behind him, beside him. The hallway felt different this time. Same mirrors, same flowers. Same private elevator at the far end. But my feet did not run. My breath did not tear. My phone did not buzz with terror. When the elevator doors opened, I saw for a brief strange second the girl I had been the night before, soaked in panic. Clutching a hospital bill like the last thread between love and loss, I stepped inside. Alessio followed. The doors closed, shutting out the room.
The cameras. The lies. For a few seconds neither of us spoke, then I looked at him.
Last time I entered this elevator because I had nowhere else to go. His eyes rested on me.
Waiting.
This time, I said, breathing in slowly.
Realizing the air no longer hurt the way it had before.
I'm not running.
Something changed in his face. The same small shift I had seen that first night. But now I understood it better. It was not weakness.
It was a door opening in a man who had spent years becoming a locked room. Mira, he said quietly, I need you to know something. My heart began to pound for an entirely different reason.
What? I have never liked anyone easily. I have never trusted softness. I have never believed a person could walk into my life by accident and change the way a room felt after she left.
He looked down for a moment,
as though honesty cost him more than any contract ever had.
When you ran into this elevator,
I thought I was helping you because of your mother, he said. Then I stayed because of you. My throat tightened. I could not force a response past it.
I am not asking you for anything tonight, he continued. Not gratitude, not love, not trust you are not ready to give. I am only telling you the truth before someone else teaches you to doubt it. I did not choose you because you were helpless.
I chose you because even broken, you refused to be bought. Even afraid you stood. Even after being denied. You still ran for the woman who loved you. Tears filled my eyes.
But this time I did not hide them. I don't know how to be loved by someone like you, I admitted. Then we learned slowly, he said. You make it sound possible. For you, he answered. I would like to become possible. The elevator opened into the garage, but neither of us moved immediately.
Outside cameras waited. Rumors would continue. My mother was still healing. Life would not turn easy simply because one powerful man had chosen to stand beside me. But something had changed in me that my father could no longer touch.
I had entered that hotel as a daughter begging to be remembered. I was leaving as a woman who had finally remembered herself. 2 weeks later, my mother moved to the recovery center outside the city. It was quiet there, with windows overlooking a garden and nurses who called her Mrs. Bennett with respect rather than curiosity. She complained about the soup, corrected the pillows, and told Alessio he stood too stiffly for a man visiting a patient, which made Luca look away to hide a smile. Alessio came often, never with cameras.
Never with speeches big enough to impress anyone. Sometimes he brought books for my mother, sometimes coffee for me. Sometimes nothing at all except his impossible quiet. And somehow even that felt like care. He did not crowd our days. He simply made it clear he would appear whenever needed and disappear whenever asked. My father called once, I did not answer. He sent a letter.
My mother read it first and handed it back unopened. Some apologies are written to reduce guilt, not repair harm, she said. You do not have to open the door just because someone knocked late.
So, I did not. Bennett Development lost the Romano deal, then lost more. Reporters found enough truth to damage the image Richard had spent years polishing. The board removed him from control. Celeste vanished from the society pages.
Vivian stopped smiling like she owned every room.
But after the first week I stopped watching. Their collapse was not my healing.
My healing was my mother learning to walk slowly down a bright hallway without pain folding her in half. My healing was sleeping through the night without hearing ballroom laughter in my dreams. My healing was standing in front of a mirror and no longer seeing the girl's security nearly removed.
A month later, St. Agnes opened the Elena Bennett Patient Fund. My mother and I stood together at the dedication, not as charity cases, not as Richard Bennett's hidden family,
but as women who had survived the cost of being dismissed. Other families would now get help before desperation drove them into impossible choices.
Before some daughter had to run between pride and an operating room.
Alessio stood at the back away from the cameras, where only I could really see him.
When our eyes met, he did not smile for applause.
He only gave me a small nod as if reminding me the victory belonged to me first. One evening, as the sun lowered behind the recovery garden, Alessio found me sitting on a bench beneath a white flowering tree.
Your mother threw me out, he said. I looked up, startled.
She what? She said I was hovering and making the flowers nervous.
I laughed. A real laugh this time, bright enough to surprise us both. He sat beside me, leaving the same respectful space he had left in hospital corridors. She likes you, I said. She threatened me with a spoon. That means she likes you. He nodded gravely. Good to know. The silence that followed was gentle. Not empty. I looked at his hands, strong and still, and thought about how many people feared them, and I thought about the elevator, the garage, the hospital lobby, the ballroom. The 1,000 ways power can wound, and the one rare way it can protect without possessing. I used to think love would feel like someone promising never to leave, I said quietly. Now I think maybe it feels more like someone staying without making you beg. He turned to me. All the guarded pieces of the man the city whispered about receding just enough for truth to show. Then let me stay, he said. My heart trembled, but it did not run. Slowly, I whispered. He nodded. Slowly. Months later, people told the story in versions easier for strangers to consume. Some said Alessio Romano fell in love at first sight with a beautiful girl who burst into his private elevator. Some said I changed him. Some said he saved me. They were all partly wrong. He did not fall for me because I looked beautiful beneath hotel lights. I was rain damp, terrified, humiliated, shaking so hard my fingers could barely hold a hospital bill. He did not save me the way stories like to save women, by replacing one dependence with another, and I did not change him by being soft or fragile or grateful. I changed him because he saw that love does not always arrive dressed in silk, smiling at the right tables, speaking the right language. Sometimes love arrives breathless, ashamed, desperate, late for a surgery deposit. Sometimes it forces its way into a private elevator with tears on its face and a mother's name in its mouth. The man who had never liked anyone did not love me because I ran toward him. He loved me because I was running for someone else. And in a world full of people protecting their image, I was still protecting love. If you want, I can do part 2 as well. Same style, same English, same comma-based format, and make it even more emotional and cinematic.